Can you find yourself through making? I'm Zoe, and after recovering from a long battle with burnout, I moved to the Japanese countryside to rediscover my creativity. I spent a year experimenting with everything from traditional dyeing techniques to yarn spinning and learning that the real art was simply finding joy again. Now, I document my life here on the mountain, the crafts I love, the food I make, and the life with my gorgeous dog Miso. If you're looking for a bit of slow living and creative inspiration, I'd love for you to follow along. And all of the projects you see me make on this channel are available for custom order, so flick me an email today at zoemorimotoartist@gmail.com. About a month ago, it was cherry blossom season here in Japan, but I have just had so much footage for you guys on YouTube that I still haven't had a chance to post any yet, so let's have a look at it.
So peaceful here, and yeah, there's so much pink around. I'm getting so excited. I'm not even halfway down the mountain yet, but this is just like in my local neighborhood, so yeah, I'm really excited. The sakura's here!
So I was pretty confused this year when I went to go cherry blossom hunting because unlike other years, I was walking around my local neighborhood, and when I would take Miso for a walk especially, I could see lots of pink flowers everywhere around. So when I specifically went to go cherry blossom hunting and I drove down the mountain, I was getting so excited because there was pink everywhere. But as soon as I got to the city, I really couldn't see any yet, and I was just so confused because it's a lot colder at the top of the mountain, usually about 3 or 4 degrees colder than the city. And you would think that they would bloom first because they're a lot warmer.
I'm definitely struggling to find a big sakura spot here. Kochi, my kind of neighbors, told me that it doesn't really have like a lot of sakura. Unfortunately, they use a lot of the mountains to make their like wood for whatever building supplies and stuff. So back in the day they had a lot more, but now they've all kind of changed to evergreen trees and kind of taken out a lot of the natural cherry blossoms that they had. But I have managed to find this little spot here just along the coast, but honestly this is like the only tree in the park that's blooming. Maybe there's like 1 or 2 more, but the view on the other side is actually probably better. It's the ocean, so let's go have a look at that instead.
So as you can see, I thought that there was no sakuras blooming and that I was way too late, but unfortunately I was a week early. So yeah, it just really confused me this year. Apparently Kochi was one of the last places to go into full bloom, even though it was one of the first places to start blooming. So yeah, it was just a little bit weird like that. So unfortunately I didn't get a lot of footage. The day I went out filming I didn't get a lot, but the week after, all the spots that I tried to go to were like in full bloom. So yeah, it was just a little bit annoying like that. At the same time, I was copping a bit of hay fever, so I decided to go home and kind of call it a day. And then I decided to start trying out this recipe of a traditional Italian style bolognese. Now, I've been following someone on both Instagram and YouTube called chefmarconyc for quite a long time, and I just love the simplicity of his Italian recipes, and I thought I would give his bolognese recipe a try.
What are you doing? You gonna make bolognese with me today? You gonna make a bolognese? Making a bolognese? No interested. Okay. Enough time for you then. Okay.
And pretty much what surprised me the most about this recipe was that instead of being heaps of passata or tomato base, the main base was actually like a chicken bone stock and then also a milk base. And that just really threw me off. But of course I wasn't going to argue with tradition, and I wanted to give it a go. And it's one of those ones where it's really easy to make, but you just have to let it simmer for a very long time, 4 hours in fact. So I decided if I was going to make it, I'm going to make a nice big batch so that I can make a few different things out of it and just put some in the freezer or whatever and have a really awesome yummy meal available that is easy on one of those days where I'm just too tired to do anything. So yeah, I was really surprised at how amazing it tasted. I did have to make a few alterations though. Just being in Japan, it is a bit difficult to get some things, and if you can get them, they're just kind of stupidly expensive. So instead of using like a pancetta at the start, I just used this cut of the pig that's called tontoro in Japanese. And basically it is what they make guanciale from, which is the pork jowl. So I just bought some of that and then kind of like minced it up in my food processor, and I thought that would just give it that really beautiful porky fatty flavor. But of course it's not like smoked or anything, it's just kind of like bacon rashers. So yeah, it doesn't have any like crazy flavors added to it, but it still has that fatty aspect. It tasted so damn good, and I ended up making a lasagna with it a few days later and also giving some to one of my neighbors, and she also absolutely loved it too. So I will definitely be making this recipe again, and I cannot wait. A couple of weeks later, my hay fever symptoms had finally subsided and I finally started to get some energy back. It was honestly so draining, and yeah, I just felt so zapped for a couple of weeks there. So after having a lot of success with my garden hat, I had another 2 hat projects lined up and I wanted to get straight into the next one. For this project, I decided to make a simple cap, but I wanted to make it out of a gorgeous self-woven saki ori fabric. Saki ori is a Japanese art, and it basically means to rip and weave, with the word saki coming from saku, to rip, and ori coming from oru, to weave. It was traditionally used to recycle clothes and weave them into a new fabric once they were damaged or worn out, or in these days if someone just got bored of them. Now, considering I already had my hat pattern from the garden hat that I made, and all of that part was pretty simple and easy, it was just straight into ripping the little strips for the fabric and getting into weaving. Now, I personally got into saki ori weaving because I just kind of wanted to make something more textural and interesting, and when I was researching the works of Sheila Hicks, who is probably one of my favorite weavers and just textile artists in general, I noticed that she used a lot of non-traditional textiles, and in specific she would use things that were like very thick or textural, or she would just put a lot of different things in there rather than just weaving a single strand of yarn like most regular fabric is produced. Anyway, I just thought that looks like so much fun and I want to give it a go too, so all I had on hand at the time were bits of fabric offcuts that I kind of saved in case I could figure out something to do with it. I just thought linen fabric is so expensive, and you know, maybe I'll be able to use these offcuts for like a patchwork piece or something like that. So anyway, I just grabbed out my stash of all of these fabric offcuts and I just started kind of weaving them into the fabric one day, and then I started mixing it with like wool and just anything that I had on hand that was a bit unusual or texturally interesting, and I ended up coming up with these saki ori pockets, which were kind of like the first thing that got me into this weaving style. So we ended up with 69 centimeters worth of fabric here, which is not bad because I actually was planning to just do like a 25 centimeter wide one, and here I have like the full width of the loom, so it's pretty much like almost 60 centimeters, I believe. And from then on, this has just kind of grown and evolved more and more. And yeah, I basically just realized that I can use all of the textile offcuts and waste that come from dressmaking, like Western dressmaking, and kind of reweave them into new funky fabric that is more exciting than anything I could buy anyway. So it's kind of like win-win situation, right? For this project in particular though, I ended up just buying like 10 centimeter increments of fabric colors that I liked. I just didn't have anything on hand that I liked, and I didn't want to dye it myself, and I kind of looked in a few like thrift stores and stuff, but unfortunately most of the thrift stores these days are just all polyester clothing, and I'm just such a natural girly, so I didn't want anything to do with that. So I just bought these like 10 centimeter increments of fabric and some offcuts that they had in the fabric store in the colors that I wanted, and I just basically ripped them up and went from there. Now this was my first time not using any fabric scraps and just kind of weaving pre-made fabric into something new and more interesting and more textural, and I honestly just kind of hated it when I finished. I was almost not going to make this hat because I hated the fabric so much. I don't know, it's just like when you're weaving with fabric scraps, a lot of the time you don't really get a choice of the size and the pieces, and it's just a lot more random and a lot more textural. And because I was just weaving these fabric strips from like kind of, you know, big square pieces of fabric that I had ripped up, there just wasn't a lot of like visual interest, and when I had finished it just kind of looked like a bought piece of fabric. And if you look at the very top bit of the fabric, you'll see I tried to like twist them together and do a few things, and then I just ended up hating those even more, and I was just like, oh no, what am I gonna do? And yeah, I honestly was just not even going to continue on with this project. But let me tell you, when I am so happy that I just pushed through and continued on with this project, because this is probably one of my favorite pieces that I have made to date. And yeah, I just can't believe I was getting so wrapped up in what the fabric looked like that I was gonna cancel the whole project for that. Once I had the fabric made anyway, this piece was pretty straightforward. I traced out the pattern pieces onto the fabric, I stitched them together, and before you know it, we had a hat. But it actually wasn't that simple because I was still in my study phase of hat making, and there are a few steps that I kind of learned through this project. So this was my first project where I used the hat wire straight away, and if you watched my last video about making the garden hat, you would have heard my whole debacle about that and just how long it took me to figure out the hat wire. So that was like one positive thing, I suppose. And the next thing as well, I used this hat tape stuff, and then that kind of was one of the things that really allowed me to excel with my beauty in the finishing of the hat. So even from the inside, this hat looks beautiful, and I'm so happy with the results. I don't hate any of it at all. Sewing in the hat tape after the lining, it just really allowed me to get such a clean finish, and now if I ever make any other hats, I will probably always use this. This was also my first hat where I had the proper clips to kind of hold all the pieces together, because when you're using this saki ori fabric, it is a little bit thick and it is also quite loose, so trying to pin it together, it just doesn't really work. So I really needed to get those clips that I kept seeing everybody using on Instagram and TikTok, and I finally bought some, and oh my gosh, it just made everything go together so smooth. I could hold everything in place and then just remove them once I got close enough to that part, and it still just kept everything together really lovely and flush.
Hey. You wanna play? Just a minute. I almost finished my hat, okay? Can you give me 5 minutes? Can you wait 5 minutes? 5 minutes too long for you, isn't it? Okay? Just 5 minutes. 5.
I have just finished sewing the hat. What is this even called? The hat tape to the hat, but look at this. I don't even know if it will show up, but I literally have about 3 or 4 coils around this cardboard reel of thread left. So just super happy. I was getting a bit worried because actually when I was sewing along this back part, because it was so thick, it kept snapping, and I had to adjust the stitch length quite a few times and come from the other way just because, hey, you're back again. But yeah, I had to come from the other way just because it kept snapping there, even though I changed the stitch length and everything. It was just being a bit of an a-hole. But yeah, it looks super awesome. The last little stitch here. I absolutely love this hat. It is so cool, and it actually wasn't that difficult to make. Once I got the wire in the brim sorted out, and You can't even tell that it's actually wire unless you do something crazy like that. But I also like the fact that it means that you can choose how much it is, because sometimes, you know, you get a hat and you want it to be really like that, or you want it to be flat, but you don't have that option. And I just really love that about this wire. And one other bonus is it makes the hat like super light. Yeah, this is the Sakiori hat. I can't believe it, like literally, I'm still looking at the scraps on the floor here. So this is what the fabric was, and this is what it looks like as a hat. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this process with me. I am so glad I didn't give up on this hat. Like literally, I was looking at that fabric the other day and just thinking how much I hated it and that I didn't want to make the hat. But now that it's as the hat, it just looks so awesome. And I'm so glad I ended up pushing through and making it. And honestly, sometimes that's just what you have to do when you're like right in the middle of it and you hate things. It's like when I was oil painting and my friend explained to me, God bless you, Kate, love you, how you just go on this mental journey of like loving it and then doing one more stroke and hating it and then doing that. So that's just what art is, isn't it? Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed this journey with me. If you're interested in any of my pieces, just email me at zoemorimotoartist@gmail.com. I've got it down in the link below. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Happy making.